Have you ever walked away from a conversation and thought, why did I do that? You know you care, you know you love them, and you do really want this to work, and yet when things get intense, you shut down, go quiet, and you disappear emotionally. Not because you don't value the relationship, but because something just feels like it's too uncomfortable, too confusing, too unsettling, simply just too much to deal with right now. The struggle is the better time to understand this experience doesn't ever seem to come back around. Research consistently shows that emotional withdrawal is one of the strongest predictors of relationship breakdown. Not explosive fights, not big dramatic betrayals. It's the disconnection. It's the distance, the avoidance that keeps us from that sweet bonding intimacy that we all so desire. And here's what's most interesting that humans don't realize. Avoidance and shutting down isn't a character flaw or a personality defect. It's actually a protective strategy that your nervous system has learned over time, and it works really well. So how do you unlearn it? Well, the first thing to know is that you can unlearn it. The second thing to know is there might always be a tendency to do that. However, you can remember what going one direction gives you, and you know what the other direction gives you because you've been doing it for a really long time. And so once we have success in a new direction, then we want to go that way. So the question is really what principles and skills are actually needed to build the emotional safety and capacity necessary to shift from avoiding into the ability to emotionally connect. And if you're the partner by chance who feels the avoidance and the distance from your partner who is shutting down, it's helpful for us to know how to respond in a way that builds that emotional safety instead of the pressure and panic and anxiety that follows when you don't know what's going on. Because I want you to know that's normal too. We have to do this all while still honoring our own needs. That can be a tall ask sometimes. Welcome to Love Shack Live, the podcast for people standing at a relationship's crossroads. It's for those navigating daily friction, a widening emotional gap, and the quiet hope that something stronger between us is still possible. I'm Stacey Bartley, a relationship mentor and skill builder, and I'm here with my co-host and lover, Tom, and our daughter, Brooke. Together, the three of us teach relationship skills that most of us were never taught. We teach things like how to regulate your nervous system, how to navigate conflict to the betterment of everybody, and how to repair our messes instead of retreat or defend them. And today we're unpacking why avoidance happens and what it's really costing both partners and the practical steps that can move you from shutting down to showing up with awareness and understanding. Because shutting down isn't who you are, it's what you've learned. And if we were to really be honest here, we know it's not working. We just don't know what else to do.
Hey, thank you for coming. Welcome to the Love Shack.
So let's dive into this conversation. Why avoidance happens is important for us to understand. Because man, is there some wild and crazy notions out there about this, right? Everything to they're intentionally malicious and they do it on purpose and they just want to freak me out and they just want to leave me hanging and it's because they don't care. I mean, like there's some wild narratives out there that, man, okay, time out. Before we go extreme, let's just talk about the realities of things.
I just think this is a very important topic that we're covering, you know, and I think just like we say often, all of us can be avoidant at some time.
And will be.
And will be, yes.
Yeah. So we all relate to the emotion, but it's just so funny. When I do it, I understand what's going on. And when you do it, it's this terrible, egregious thing. Not to dismiss the impact and struggle that it can bring into relationships, not at all. But if we can just stop and pause for a moment, as we go through today's episode, you're going to see that all of us know what this feels like. Right. Every single one of us. So avoidance, AKA shutting down, it is a coping skill. It's protection. And how it comes about is when emotions rise in the body, it starts to feel risky. It starts to feel tense. It starts to feel overwhelmed. Can you, listener, tap into a moment where everything starts to slow down and I can't quite think straight and my brain feels foggy and I'm just overwhelmed to the point in time I can't even formulate words. I can feel paralyzed. I just had a moment like this in my own personal life, literally like 3 days ago. And I'm usually pretty good at taking some hard emotional punches. But I got some news from my youngest son. And I was really brave while I was talking with him on the phone. And when I hung up, it was like my body went into the shutdown mode. And all I could think of was get to the ground, get to the grass, bury your face in the grass. And somehow I just felt like that was going to stabilize me for a minute, because man, were my knees wobbly. And then the flood of emotions just came out. And I remember, babe, you coming out going, babe, you want to come in the house? Are you okay? I couldn't even answer you. I could not formulate a sentence or any words. Now, that's extreme, and we can do these in all kinds of subtle ways. But my point is, if we think about it for just a minute in the human journey and experience, we've probably all had moments where something happened or information was given or an experience came upon us, and we found ourselves in this overwhelming place where I was speechless. I didn't know how to speak. I didn't know what to do. I was just swimming. And it's kind of like our brain, our frontal lobe goes offline. And then my nervous system starts to have to regulate. And it's that place where it just feels so intense, and it can feel like danger and vulnerability in those moments of talking about my feelings. It feels like a very bad idea. Like, I don't know that that's my answer. So the nervous system does what it knows to do. It literally shuts down, and this will reduce the intensity for us really fast. I'll just need to figure out how to explain why it's okay as a human being with the person who's like, I know you really wanted to know, like, what's going on and how did you get here and how can I help you with this? And there was a whole lot of questions, but I needed to even find my footing before I could even step in and talk about that. I had to kind of work that through for myself yet. And if you think about that, a lot of us don't have the skills to even do that initial step, right? It's just the weight of the emotion. And then maybe I feel embarrassed because the wind just got taken out of my cells and I literally don't know what to do. And I feel overwhelmed. And maybe for some of us, that makes us feel small or incapable or inadequate. Like I feel silly and crazy and dumb and a whole host of other adjectives that we would use in those critical moments. But I really just want to emphasize, like, this is human. My nervous system will shut down when I am over the top, overwhelmed, and flooded with emotions. And there's no amount of pressuring that's going to change that. In fact, the pressuring makes it worse. So now I'm just adding to the complexity and the chaos that I'm already struggling with. And I shut down more easily now because I don't understand the first round when it happened. I certainly don't I don't understand the second. And I know that this is all very difficult for the person that's shutting down. And then there's the other side where the person's trying to support the person that's shutting down. And that can create panic too, because I'm also in a world of unknown. I am also not understanding what's going on. I'm also not knowing how to help and support you. And then I start making up all kinds of things about why this is happening. And what's interesting is most of us will go into a self-deprecating conversation, either about myself. This is my fault. I should have been able to take care of this for my partner, the person that I love. Or it will become a deprecating conversation about my partner who is feeling this way.
Well, also, let's just be honest. You said the person who's trying to support the person who's being avoidant. I wouldn't necessarily use the word support in that situation. I would say it's the anxious person who's panicking about the avoidant person. Like, sure, they may say, oh, I'm just trying to support you. But really what they're trying to do is get the person who's avoidant to reassure them that everything is okay, which is the last thing that the avoidant person wants to do in that moment. But as the anxious person, it feels like you can't breathe until they do it. It's literally not possible for them. But that feels like it's like the ultimate slight or the ultimate like knife in the heart. It's exact opposite coping mechanisms, you know?
Mm-hmm. And when I'm feeling overwhelmed and trying to shut down and go spend some time to figure out my own stuff for a moment, and you start to ask me for reassurance, I'm like, I can't even give it to myself. I got nothing for you. Yeah. Back up. Give me a minute. I can't give it to you. I just had this image. I don't know if this works, but I'm going to go with it anyway. In my CPR training, when I used to be a lifeguard, and this is like going back lifetimes, long time ago, I remember learning how to do mouth to mouth. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
So when you pull somebody out of the pool, you can immediately usher that in. But as we were practicing on each other, there's this crazy experience where somebody is covering your mouth and nose and they're trying to help you breathe. And you're like, get off me, right? Don't do it. So that kind of came to mind when you said, hey, listen, I just need some reassurance from you. So says the anxious person, and the avoidance person, like, I can't breathe right now. Don't put your mouth on mine. I can't just back up a minute. Right. And so everybody's kind of like bidding for some kind of comfort to just feel like they're okay so that we can continue on. And those moments can get really intense when we're all trying to cope and use each other as a resource, when maybe we all just need to kind of find our own footing first. And so we can come back to it from a different place of not panic and not shutting down, but from a place of being able to truly understand each other when we're in a more settled state. Because here's the thing, overwhelm, it rises very quickly. And for those of us who can talk through it, we are able to put those things into words, and then we just start to kind of word vomit. And that's how we're coping with the emotion that comes on very, very fast. For somebody who doesn't have that skill or that ability in practice, right, that overwhelm rises really, really quickly. And all I can think about is I need to go into the quiet spaces all by myself so I can make some sense of this. And fear is a real thing that we're dealing with here. So we're trying to think of anything that won't make it worse. And then there's the confusion about what you even feel. I don't even know why I feel this way. The time slows, your head starts to spin, and the words don't come. And then there's the self-judgment that might come that's layered on top of that. So the self-judgment could be, oh, this is so silly. Oh my gosh, I must be crazy. Everybody's going to judge me as a weak person, as an incapable person. And that can go on both sides of the equation too. The person who's trying to support the other person.
Or for the avoidant person, they could think, God, why can't I just say how I feel? My partner always yells at me for running away when I get emotionally overwhelmed. Why can't I just stay?
Yeah. I've had our clients use words like, I feel shameful needing to go away. I feel guilty when I feel like I can't stay in the conversation because I can't listen anymore. I'm feeling crazy because all I want to do is go climb in a closet and shut the door and be all by myself. And yet I've got this person that's begging and pleading for connection and all the things that I know I want. It's just, why do I do this? How come this happens for me? What's wrong with me? And that's where I'm starting to, step into conversations of self-deprecation myself. And what's interesting is I just want to point this out. The more self-judgment I'm starting to lay on myself for how I'm just habitually coping with this overwhelming experience, that in and of itself layers on the overwhelm and the complexity and the chaos. So now I'm not just dealing with the overwhelm of the moment or all the things that maybe I need to face and address and look at. I'm also dealing with the complexity of my own emotional overwhelm by all the self-judgment. And if we flip it, in an anxious person, and Brooke, I want you to speak to this, because in an anxious person, as we've already stated, it works just the opposite. They're very good at putting words right to their emotions and their feelings. And when their emotions start to flare and they get overwhelmed, they're going to start to word vomit and beg and please and ask a ton of questions and apply pressure and just want to know, just give me the answers and then I'll be okay. And they'll do that until they're exhausted.
A couple of things. It's not always accurate what we're putting words to, I'll speak for the anxious people. I feel like a lot of times we over exaggerate what we're feeling and we say things that aren't necessarily true, or we guess how we're feeling just because, kind of know. But I feel like it's just that we're more comfortable talking about it, even if we're not sure of what it is, because it feels reassuring that the connection is still there. Even if it's bad, even if we're fighting, even if we're saying things that we don't really want to be saying, it feels worse for you to turn around and walk away than it does for us to keep communicating, even in an unhealthy way. Like, it used to be super triggering when my fiance would tell me we were done with the conversation because he had reached his limit and realized nothing good was going to come if we kept talking. I would do anything I possibly could to keep him talking, even though he had said, I'm done. Like, it just feels like you're cutting off my arm and then I'm going to be alone with my own thoughts. Oh my God, no. That's torture. When there's no one to like bounce it off of, or like you can tell me that, no, that's not at all what I meant. If I don't have access to that, it feels awful.
Well, and then there's your own personal self-judgment about all of that too. It's then I can feel silly and embarrassed.
I can't believe
pushed
I
it too
said
far.
that.
Yeah.
Yes.
I really escalated the truth. I shouldn't
you can clearly see where you should have stopped talking and you didn't.
And so then that is the same mechanism that layers over the emotional overwhelm that's already there, now just gets intensified. And what's crazy is everybody's doing it. Both sides are doing it. We're just coping with this escalating emotion in two similar but different ways. But the thing that I find is really interesting, that I really hope you'll take away from this moment of description, is that everybody is feeling the same thing. Like everybody's feeling spun out. Everybody's feeling anxious. Everybody's feeling overwhelmed. Everybody feels like they're drowning. Everybody wants to be helped and supported. One is just going, I need to go figure this out on my own. And the other person is saying, no, please don't leave me. I'll die if you leave me with my own thoughts. And one is going, I just need to be with my own thoughts for a minute. But we're having a very similar emotional experience. And sometimes I just think that levels the playing field a little bit. So we can maybe hold on to that look, they're feeling just as upset as I am, even though they're not using words and I am, or they're not escalating the situation and trying to stay connected. We really are kind of all driving for this similar thing.
Yeah, because I think anxious people can say, like, I'll speak for myself here, but I could say to an avoidant person, God, you're so heartless. I'm just sitting here crying and you're not showing any emotion. Do you even care about me? When they're feeling all of the things that I'm feeling, they're just not expressing them outwardly. And I can understand why it comes across that way. But if we really listen to all the things Mom 2 just said, you can see that's not true at all. And think about how hurtful that would feel to hear that about yourself, that simply because you're not acting a little bit crazy like I am in this moment, crying and yelling and screaming, that doesn't mean you're heartless. It just means you're expressing yourself a bit more calmly than me at the moment. And when you're in that heated moment, it does feel, not as a calm person in this moment, I would never say that someone was being heartless, but it does feel like, why aren't you acting like me? Like, why isn't this affecting you at all? It's almost like they're antagonizing you by being as calm as they are, even though that's just how they're not doing anything. They're simply just being there and feeling their feelings. It just shows up differently than you.
Well, and then when they get pressured, here's where the switch flips and they're starting to yell, or I'm fine, just leave it alone.
Or I am sad, like this isn't good. I don't feel good, but I'm just not crying, and then that makes them start yelling with you because they're so frustrated that you won't fucking stop asking them why they're not crying. I'm a little bit passionate about this current topic just because I can see so many times where I've let my anxiety run the show. So I'm coming at this as kind of like the all the places in the past where I did do the things I'm saying now. I don't like it. I don't like looking back at that and seeing how I let myself kind of spin out like the Tasmanian devil, I let myself become unhinged. That doesn't feel good to go back and look at it, but I'm sharing it to help see what happens when you do. It's nothing good comes from that is all I'm saying. Like when we get so tied up into our attachment styles and then we think that we're stuck in that box and there's nowhere we're anxious, you're avoidant, that's it. It's never going to change. It sort of emboldens you in your behavior, and then nothing good comes from that.
Well, and an avoidant can go to these extremes too. They can be so avoidant and so shut down that they refuse to engage again, even though they want to. right?
Mm-hmm. Or they just say like that, this is just how I am, accept it, get over it.
Yeah. Or every time I try and work something out or emotion comes up, you're crazy. You go crazy. And like, ooh, I don't even know how to deal with that. I can't deal with that on my own terms with myself, let alone with you. And so you can start to see where ironically it sets up this dynamic between us both actually, where we both turn into avoiding what needs to be talked about. As the insecure, or I as the anxious will be walking on eggshells, hoping to not say or do anything that was going to cause my partner to go AWOL and shut down and disappear. And so I make it up that I can say and do a whole bunch of things to keep them around without realizing whether they feel overwhelmed or they don't feel overwhelmed very often doesn't have anything to do with you.
Yeah.
They have, believe it or not, as a human being, we all have these internal ecosystems that are exceptionally independent of each other. And it's common that because we live and work and play and love and sleep together, that there are things I do, right, that fire you off. We call them triggers. And there are things that you do that fire me off. But the internal conflict and overwhelm was already there. From work, from bills, from political climates, from social media, from an issue with the friends or a bill I can't pay or it's already there. My emotional capacity has been sucked out through just living of day to day and has nothing to do with you. And then based on how I'm managing my internal ecosystem is going to greatly determine what I become sensitive to when I'm around you. And what we're doing is we're both trying to manage the emotional overwhelm in our own internal ecosystems and just have extremely two different coping styles. Now, traditionally, an anxious person wants things to move. They want action. They want reassurance, and they're going to push and push and push and push and push to get it. Like, I will go to the ends of the earth. And an avoidant person wants to be able to just check out and forget about it. Now, there's pros and cons in both. Both have a very important role to play in our relationships. It's important that things continue to move and progress along and that conversations do happen and do take place. That's good. But it's also good to have time and space to think through and get clear about what it is you're thinking and understand your own internal overwhelm before I start trying to commingle it with you. And we can find ourselves in either extreme, people who won't show up, won't face things in their life, won't take accountability for those things. They stay in a shutdown state and take it out on even their person as to why they do and say and behave the way that they do. But I hope that you're starting to see it's not so much about what we need to do to cope with the internal overwhelm. It's really more about what we do after that is important. So go do your thing. Go talk it out with a girlfriend or a guy friend, somebody that you can talk to if you're a talker and you get anxious. Go shut down and be quiet in your room. But then we've got to have the skills to come back to the table and have the important conversations that need to be had so that we can co-create a moment through this and not get stuck in it and use me and my coping style and you and your coping style as the mechanism for malicious endeavors and meaning and avoidance on both sides. At the end of the day, just look, if you're tracking with me here, and I know I'm throwing a lot at you, we all end up in an avoidant shutdown place. The anxious is shut down and won't say what they really need or what they're thinking and what they're feeling because they're afraid the avoidant partner is going to go away. The avoidant partner is going to stay away because they don't want to have to deal with the reaction of not knowing or the intensity that creates more emotional overwhelm. So everybody's in a shutdown avoidant place. And we just then start to create life very autonomously, being very careful as we can be, to not tip each other off. And it's probably going to be the anxious person who blows a gasket at some point in time and jumps on the avoidant person, where the avoidant person retaliates, get off my back. What do you want from me? I've told you everything I know. Okay. That's all I got. What do you want me to do with this? I got no answers. And then we all go back into that avoidant pattern. And that's really kind of the cycle that we can find ourselves in as we're both trying to really create the sweet spot. Because remember, we all really care. We want this. We're in this, right? We're invested, but we just don't know how to take our coping styles and put them together and then actually have a productive conversation to help us navigate forward. And avoidance are and anxious are, it doesn't matter. Really, at the end of the day, it doesn't matter. What matters is, regardless of how you cope, can we get to the table and have a productive conversation where everybody understands the experiences of each other? We have to cross-pollinate that. And what commonly happens, even if we do get to the table and we start to talk, somebody gets defensive about how you are interpreting it or feeling it. I'm going to take it personal, where I'm going to take responsibility for how you feel by what you said. I'm going to get defensive about defending the messed up thing that I know I shouldn't have said and done and my overreaction. And then we kind of go back to our safe places, so to speak, our shutdown avoidant places.
I have a question, because I think there's a problem in society now. I feel like a lot of people don't really know how to understand where someone is coming from without feeling like you're trying to change their mind. Do you know what I'm saying? Can you explain a situation between an anxious and an avoidant that would represent where they understood where each other was coming from, but they didn't have to change who they were as people? Do you get what I mean?
Yeah, absolutely. And you're absolutely spot on. When we finally do open up the conversation, we're so desperate for the person to understand my side and my point of view that I won't take the ability and the time and the opportunity to understand theirs.
Yes.
I'm too busy trying to push my experience onto them. And I'm so desperate for them to understand what I'm feeling and what I'm going through that when they try and share theirs, I don't want to hear it. It's irrelevant. Doesn't matter to me. I dismiss it. I ignore it. I shut it down. Don't want to go there. It's like neither person is willing to move until you understand me. And we're both doing it. You understand me first. Oh no, screw you. You understand me first. And then maybe I'll think about understanding you. And so we're literally even having a competition as to where to begin in that dynamic.
Yeah.
I'm not willing to entertain anything outside of my perspective. And until you understand this, it's like a big screw you. And that is very pervasive in our culture and our society right now. Well, Nobody wants to understand each other. We just want to push our agendas.
So what we talk about often, to have a conversation, remember, we have to have one person is talking and one person is listening. If we have two people talking, what do we have? A fight. Brooke, what you just described is typically a fight. Mm-hmm. So we encourage people that we work with, like you volunteer, you be the one that says, okay, I'll listen, you go first, right? Because someone's got to take the lead. And that very courageous offer right there can be a significant reset to typically what happens, like, okay, I'll listen, you go. And then truly listen. It takes a lot of energy, a lot of investment to truly listen. But if we have two people talking, 100%, I don't guarantee many things, 100% guaranteed you're going to have a fight. We think if we just talk louder than the other person, that's why the volume escalates. Well, nothing's happening. Just the fight is escalating is what's happening.
Mm-hmm.
And also, like, you don't lose anything by understanding someone. No. I understand the current political climate, and that's kind of what's inspiring me to talk about this in this moment, because it's such a problem on both sides. Nothing happens to you by trying to understand someone. You know what I'm saying? An avoidant and an anxious, we'll use that example. I don't become avoidant by trying to understand my avoidant partner. And I think that maybe we don't necessarily think like in that black and white, but I feel like that's how we treat it. We're so resistant to like seeing how any part of where they come from, because we're so offended by their behavior. But what we don't realize is that if we took the time to really listen and understand where the other person with the opposite coping mechanism is coming from, you wouldn't be offended anymore. Mm-hmm. That understanding is literally the antidote to being offended by it and taking it personal. Because if you understand why they're doing what they're doing, then you can feel compassion. Then you can be like, oh my gosh, I didn't know that that's how you were feeling inside of your body. Wow. And then you can be like, oh, you're not trying to get away from me. You're just feeling overwhelmed and it's uncomfortable for you to process with another person in the room. Oh my God, that makes so much sense. It totally disarms you and makes it better. But I feel Mom too always says, you can understand someone without getting their beliefs all over you, you know? And I feel like that's the perfect example. It's not going to change the fabric of who you are as a person to understand where someone's coming from.
Well, and I so agree. It feels contagious.
Yeah.
Like if I understand you first, then I'm going to lose my way. Actually, just the opposite is going to happen. And when you understand a person's behavior because they've shared it with you, the behavior will always make sense. Mm-hmm. And so you start to see where we rob ourselves of those incredible moments where I truly do understand why you're feeling like you need to do these things that don't make any sense to me. And I really want to point out here that, you know, you sitting alone with your own thoughts about either of these styles, it's in reality you making up a whole bunch of shit that's just probably not true. Because if you're not getting it from the person that's feeling it and experiencing it, then you're making it up. Because the real intel needs to come from the person themselves. And that's the only way you're going to be able to have a real true answer about what's going on. Otherwise, we're manufacturing a lot of stuff. And it's usually get your popcorn, get your Coke. This one's going to be the worst thing that you can possibly imagine. So settle in. Let's create some really strong internal struggle here for you to have to figure out how to navigate. And then the hell of it is we're going to all act congruent to that. So now I'm behaving as though these malicious things about myself or you are true because I wasn't allowing myself to understand where they're coming from. And so I end up creating exactly what it is I didn't want. But I did it because of how I'm treating the person, which then is going to create this effect where they're going to mirror that as a human being.
Well, and when you purposely try not to understand where they're coming from, it allows you to continue to be mean to them because it removes the compassion because you're not experiencing compassion. You're purposely blocking yourself from feeling it so that you can treat them kind of like they're not a human. You're cutting yourself off from that. And also another thing I wanted to say is I feel like some people have never connected this dot before, but the reason why it's so easy for you to explain away or like forgive yourself of your own behavior is because you have your own intel all the time, running 24/7. You are aware of the reasons behind your behavior because you are living in your body. The reason why it's so hard for you to understand others is because that is missing. It's that simple. We don't have that access unless they tell us. But a lot of times we never ask the question. So of course we don't understand it.
Do you know how we do ironically try and understand it? Is we gather up a whole bunch of other people, right? And we look for consensus. And I just want to point out there, you're still not getting it from the person who is experiencing it. And you know how many different nuances there can be about one experience throughout human journey.
Millions.
Like so many. And we think we've really accomplished something when I say, hey, Sarah, come on over here. Let me give you the lay of the land here. So what do you think it is? Would you agree with that? Would you do that? Social media is just like that. Like we chew on these things as though if we can all just kind of come to a consensus, there will be a truth of all truths, like the holy grail of all truth will unfold. And then I can go, see, my point is valid. Without realizing, oh my goodness, sometimes that just adds more chaos and cacophony to the whole conversation. And even still, you ask 1,000 people about why your person does what they do. You're still not asking the person who's experiencing it. And there's only one person in the whole mix of things that knows, the person who's experiencing it and who is connecting those dots for themselves, right? To understand themselves. And that's how you're going to know where they went and what they meant and what they need. And also the ideas and solutions and remedies that are required for them to be able to show up and feel safe again. It won't be because you withheld what you needed to say. It won't be because you made up all the reasons why they're doing X, Y, and Z in your desperate attempts to try and solve this. It will be because I finally got myself into a place where I could understand myself and bring that to the table without overreacting. And it will be because I have the ability to listen and understand someone outside of my own perspective. Easy to say, difficult and challenging to do.
I mean, you were reading my mind, because as Brooke said, the reason why we don't have that intel, no judgment, but from our observation, even in our own small metric of thousands of people we've worked with, most of us have never been taught this skill-based journey to create an environment to where our special someone, or even maybe a family member or a stranger, will be open and feel that emotional safety to where they will share their intel with us. That's a skill that we don't see modeled very often, very effectively, for sure.
Check this one out. And then I can hear it. I can hear you, listener, going, yeah, well, they don't deserve it.
That's true.
They don't deserve for me to keep my shit together while I understand them. Are you kidding me right now? That's bullshit. If they want to fix this, they're going to have to come to me. Look, here's what I want you to know. You don't do this for them. You do it for yourself. Because who do you think is turning into a hot shit show, making up a whole bunch of stuff that you're not even quite sure is true? How is that going to escalate and impact what you say and do? It absolutely will. And this is how you as a person turn into what a client or many clients of mine has said. This relationship has turned me into a monster of myself. I have become a version of me that I can't even believe I am. It's because we will allow ourselves to do these things that we know on our best days would never be okay. But I do it because you deserve it. I do it because, and I'm not going to regulate because they don't deserve that kind of care and compassion either, without realizing, but you do. You do this for you. You don't do it for them. Will it benefit them? Yes, but you know who it's going to ultimately benefit? You. Don't forget that. So me understanding another human being is a wonderful gift I give to myself. And it just so happens to have a wonderful impact on the person that I'm trying to understand too. Right. And it's amazing how the armor can come off and we can set the weapons down and we can have some conversations about how we navigate from this moment forward. So the person who gives first and gives fast, you actually get the benefit of the whole thing. You do it for you. So that conversation that they don't deserve it really needs to be thrown in the garbage can. You're just angry and hurt and disappointed. And I get it, but don't let that destroy your life. Don't let that be the story that you run, so much so that you turn into a version of yourself that is so far from the person that you know yourself to be, because now I'm just creating internal suffering for myself. And that's no way to live. We need to do better than that. Okay. Now that we've handled they don't deserve it,
well,
but
you
do.
You just described what Stacey's introduced more recently. What you're going to the courtroom, you're going to go punitive, which is understandable. Look, we're not saying that this is difficult. And we all have that impulse to go that, like, I'm going to make him or her pay. Well, there's one option. And we say, is there another option? Yes. So metaphorically, go to the classroom, go to that place of genuine curiosity rather than we absolutely know what he or she's thinking. No, we don't. Like, but we truly don't, because we don't have that intel. Like Brooke said, we have it for ourselves, but we don't have it for others. Okay. So the classroom would be curious. Think of that little child that goes to the classroom. You know, they're excited, they're curious, they're open, they want to learn, they want to understand. That's not the goal of the courtroom.
That just made me think, Dad, of, you know, that feeling in when you were a kid in the classroom and your teacher was teaching you like the big concept of the day. Yeah. And we all had that feeling when it clicked. Yeah. And you're like, oh my God, I get it. You know, that's the feeling I want people to have when they're talking to their partner and they're asking them where they're coming from, because that same thing is possible. Mm-hmm. When they say, you know, I was avoiding you because I was feeling this. That is when you should be like, oh my God, it all makes sense. Not when you should be like, why the fuck did you do that? That is, they're giving you a gift by sharing where they're coming from, sharing their vulnerability and their intel. And that should make it all make sense to you so that you can fill in the gaps you are missing, not so you can punish them further, you know?
Mm-hmm. That's very often what it turns into. You know?
Yes.
And both people, I really want to say this too. I want to understand for myself, yes, but I have to have somebody who's willing to go there with me, because we're going to become extremely exhausted if I don't feel like somebody's making an effort to understand me. Like, that's really important. We need that as humans. And really, when we think about it, somebody who's willing to truly understand you independent of their own perspective, that's what I call unconditional love. Like, that is the ultimate gift. That is the thing that we are all driving for, really. I don't really even need to come up with big solutions for our issues. I don't need us to solve the world problems. I don't need that. What I need is for you to be willing to understand me. And I need to be willing to give that gift to you too. Mm-hmm. And then it's amazing what happens there. That's where that sweet, intimate sense of bonding happens as human beings. Now, there's a whole host of reasons that will prevent me from being in a place where I can understand you and vice versa. And those are the things that we need to start to learn and understand. Those are really our challenges, right? Not whether you love me or care about me or want this to work, but man, that's sure how it feels. And so the first thing that I need to create between us before we can even start to pursue this understanding of each other is I've got to feel emotionally safe to do it. And really quickly, I want to talk about emotional safety, because very often we just leave it there. Well, you got to have emotional safety. Good luck. And that's the show, folks. Good luck. Let us know how it goes in the social. And everybody has this concept, right, that they're walking away with that. And then they start to think about things that they could feel safe with, right? That then they start to impose on their partner. And ironically, it doesn't translate, because I still don't understand what my partner needs to feel safe. And they're not willing to understand what I need to feel safe. And so even though I know we need to build emotional safety, we ain't got any. And so then what are we going to do? We're going to feel overwhelmed about that. We're going to go back to our coping styles. And there we go. We're off to the races.
You're going to give us a cheat sheet?
Emotional safety. The first thing I want to say about emotional safety is it's not comfortable. We think we arrive at a sense of emotional safety when there's some ease and flow. No, actually, that's when you're in it and you already have safety to swim in. When you're filling up the swimming pool or the balloon, as we call it in our analogy of safety, it's hard and it's uncomfortable at first. You're going to have to put some elbow grease in it. And it's going to have to be very intentional. It's going to have to be very, very slow, because I am stretching myself in places and spaces that I've maybe never gone before. I'm having to hold the emotional tension for longer than I am used to having to hold it. And I am having to prevent that beautiful brain of mine of going to those old places where I make up terrible narratives about you and why you do it. And it's amazing how fast we go there, especially if we've been together for a really long time. You don't even have to use words. You get that look on your face and I'm like, that's it. I'm out. I'm done. There you go again. And they're like, what? I didn't say anything. Oh, I know what you said. Do you? Because I think this has been a misunderstanding for decades, that every time we get here, we go the same place. So we're never going to gain that understanding that we need. So it's uncomfortable. I also want to point out, it's really not an agreement. And it's certainly not avoiding the hard conversations, because then, as we've already highlighted, you're going to live in pretend and illusion. Like, you're not going to be able to go where it is you deserve to go personally and collectively if we are going to avoid conversations, and that nobody will help themselves or learn how to sit in that place to understand another person. Okay. Now, it's entirely not possible to have these conversations either and not be triggered. So that idea of, if you trigger me, this is over, or I'm feeling uncomfortable and it's over, well, that's not going to get us very far, because to build emotional safety, you're going to be triggered, but you're also going to need the skills in order to have some successes in regulating yourself. And there's all kinds of things that we can teach you to help you sit in that tension for a moment. And it sounds daunting, and at first it is, but then when you start to have some success with it, Brooke, to your point, when you were talking about the classroom where the light bulb moment goes on, do you remember how proud you were as a kid and you wanted to demonstrate and we're all going, hey, watch me, I can do it. It starts to feel like that, like this thing that you were like, no way. And then you're like, I just did that. And that was so cool. Like, look at what I can do now. And because the understanding from the emotional safety starts to trickle in, it feels so much better and less chaotic than all of the things that I've been making up I thought were true and then living congruent to. So emotional safety is the ability to be disclosed with each other in the pursuit of understanding, while each person has the skills to manage their reactions to what is being shared. Instead of reacting, I'm asking questions for further understanding. And I can't hold the tension for the two of us through the whole conversation. So this has to go back and forth in an ebb and flow. And here's where I like to pull out the metaphor of breathing. I inhale and then I exhale. I talk and then I listen. It is this ebb and flow that goes back and forth very intentionally and very slowly.
Let me ask a question for the listener who may be saying, but you said you hold your reactions, that's holding tension. You listen for understanding, but I want to have a point of clarity here. Just because you're not reacting how you used to doesn't necessarily mean that you still don't feel offended or upset by the thing that they said, right? Like, It doesn't mean that it's not a thing that hurts you or like a thing that you disagree with. It just means that you're talking about it rather than staying silent. I feel like that's a very important thing that people need to understand.
I so agree. It's the ability to be real with each other and stay connected enough through the sharing to understand what's happening within two very different humans.
Yeah.
That's the skill part, right? That is, and it's going to require skill and practice. And when you first start building emotional safety with this, I literally say to our clients, you're going to set the timer for 5 minutes. And we're going to go back and forth and each of you take a turn and then we're done and we need to rest. Because I have to build up to the ability to hold that tension. Now, this is where we got to talk about listening. So come back next week and we're going to dive more into the listening and the talking and why it is we fight and communicate the way that we do. Because I appreciate that building safety requires a lot of skill, a lot of thoughtful intention, and very slow. And it's very easy for us when somebody starts to talk and we start to feel hurt or disappointed or misunderstood, that us being able to sit in that listening position becomes extremely difficult. And we go all kinds of places. We want to jump in and correct the narrative and fix it and give advice and plead our case. And we don't realize that in the communication, I've stepped out of listening to somebody else now and understanding them. And I'm making it now about them understanding me. They didn't get their turn. Because the other thing that will happen is as a person is speaking, they feel like they're finally giving themselves the courage and permission to actually say what they've been wanting to say for a really long time that has created a lot of conflict and chaos and confusion in them. And just about the time they're in the sweet spot, think of it like scratching an itch. You're going to jump in and fix it. You're going to jump in and correct it. You're going to jump in and tell them where they're off base. And that becomes an exhausting experience because all of this does require a lot of emotional energy and capacity. So, of course, the easier thing to do now is just to shut the conversation down and be done with it. Okay. So we literally start practice 5 minutes at a time with some skills where we can go back and forth at least one time. And then that's good. And we can have a success and then we can build on that and we can build up to 10 minutes, 20 minutes, 30 minutes, 45 minutes. And then pretty soon it becomes a place where you go because getting through it feels so much better than staying mired in it and making up a whole bunch of things that are just adding to the confusion and the chaos anyway. That's your go-to. And that's how you start to get through these things effectively, but very efficiently as well. Emotional capacity, we'll talk about that next time too. That will be a good thing that will build out a little bit for you. Emotional capacity is important. I've got to have it. And then this ability to do what I call an emotional push-up, when you are going to trigger me and you are going to say some things that I don't agree with, but I'm understanding where you're coming from right now. And those are the things that start to build emotional safety, so that I can start opening up to you and understanding you and know that you will reciprocate that for me. Man, now we can really go places. So I know that's a lot to throw at you, but in this episode, I just really wanted you to understand a few key points, that we are all feeling very similar things and we're all behaving the way that we do, whether I shut down or I get anxious and speed up, right? In just different ways. But the emotion that we're wrestling with, the overwhelm, etc., is the same. We're just choosing to deal with it in polar opposite ways. And what we desperately need is that understanding. I think we've said that word so many times on this episode, but it really is the sole goal that we need. We don't necessarily need to decide who needs to be punished and who needs to pay and whose fault it is. Yes, it's important to take responsibility, but what we really need is to understand why you're thinking and feeling this way. Help me understand you. And then I want that reciprocated. I want you to understand me too. And in order to go there, we're going to need that emotional safety. So I promise next episode, we'll come back and we'll talk more about building that emotional safety out. Before we go, if by chance you are having a difficult time in this place and space and you're feeling moved to get help and support in navigating through these very challenging, difficult things with some help and support and some real life principles and tools, well, then I'm going to encourage you to please schedule a clarity call. It's a no pressure call where you get to talk to Tom, and he is very good at helping you understand patterns and things that you can do right away that will help you get started on your journey. And then he will also invite you to explore some of the programs that we have to support these very, 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 very specific places. So you can check that all out at
acbartley.com/apply.
Okay, perfect. We'd love to support and help you on this journey as well. We've supported hundreds and thousands of people in this same place. So I am wanting to jump into follow the fun. And because of our conversation today, I wanted to help us understand like our emotional capacity, i.e. what's your temperature like? Right? Like maybe there's a temperature check, and I envision like this. Wouldn't it be cool if we had like this temperature gauge on our forehead where you could look at somebody and go, okay, if it's between 1 and 3, you're good. You're open. You're present. We're good to go. We can sit down. We can have a conversation. If it goes into like 4 and 6, 4 to 6, you're slightly guarded, a little shut down, out of capacity. I could see the meter. And if we start hitting like 7 and 8, you're withdrawn, you're shut down, you're overwhelmed. I just need to give you a hug and make you a nice meal and call it a day. And then heck yeah, if we're in 9 and 10, this is where you're an emotional hot mess and you are so not fit for engagement at all. No problem. Probably best for us to kind of do some other things to help us cope a little bit better. I just think having this little temperature gauge like a thermometer would be so great, and it would measure our emotional capacity so everybody knew. But sometimes I might have to run to the mirror and like look at it myself. Yeah, that's exactly how it feels. Yeah, that's what I was thinking it was. Yeah. Oh my God, it's worse than I thought. Holy cow. Check in with yourself. Like, where are you on a scale from 1 to 10? 1 being open and present and able to sit down and have the capacity to pursue some of the things that we've talked about today. And 10 being, I'm an emotional hot mess and I need the caution tape. Don't go there. Don't breathe on me. It's not going to go well. Not because I don't like you, but because I'm out of emotional capacity. Play around with it and just notice what you notice. It's amazing. We know so much more about ourselves than we think we do. We just need to consult it and check in with it. The song for today is Rye, and she has a song called Stay Open. And I chose this song. One, she's a new and upcoming artist. I like her works, but she also has a song, This Open. I know it's faded. I know you're faded. Please open your hand and please stay open. And that's kind of the ask in these conversations. Let's just do what we can do to stay open. And if we can't stay open, then let's rest and then come back around and try again. I am convinced that if we could think of conversations more like rounds of a workout, that we don't have to get it all done and solved in one conversation when the moments emerge. But if we could be more intentional, we could understand that each round of conversation is going to help me understand something about me, about you, about our life, about us. If we would just take the time and the intention to slowly explore them. So you can catch this song on our Spotify playlist, at Love Shack Live playlist, and you can also pick it up on our website at stacybartley.com. Thank you so much for being here with us inside the Love Shack today. And if this conversation moved you or helped you feel a little more seen or gave you something to think about, please consider sharing it with somebody that you care about. That's how this podcast grows, human to human, heart to heart. And if it's helped you personally, please consider also leaving us a review. We love to hear from our listeners. Remember, love isn't enough, but skills are. So learn them, practice them, and live them. Bye-bye for now.
All right, it's time to leave the Love Shack. But before we part ways, we want you to know our door is always open and we'll leave the porch light on, ready to welcome you back whenever you need a dose of relationship wisdom. For more resources and tools, visit us at loveshacklive.com to dive deeper into the topics we've explored and find additional support for your relationship journey. Stay connected by subscribing to our podcast. Thank you for being part of our Love Shack Live community.